Is it a busy off season for the Buckeyes, or is just everyone hoping it becomes a busy off season for the Buckeyes? Welcome to Ohio State Live, right here each and every week, typically on Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. But the holidays are coming. Schedules need to be coordinated. Remember, subscribe, hit the bell for the notifications. You know when we go live that way. We've got Kevin Noon right next to me, BuckeyeHuddle.com, the Big Me podcast as well. Appreciate Kevin being here as always. Tony as well at Buckeye Huddle and the Buckeye Weekly podcast. And Steve Hellwagon, 247 Sports, Bucknuts.com. All right, guys, let's rev it up with some unfortunate news. This is something we should hit on, and here we go. This is a few days old at this point, and fortunately, everything seems to be fine. But Keenan Bailey, tight ends coach, carjacked Steve, and also a robbery involved.
Yeah, I guess there were a bunch of youths that were kind of running amok the other day there in the east side of Cleveland, where Glenville and the Ginn Academy are located. And Keenan Bailey went to the Ginn Academy to check on a pair of Ohio State's commitments, Demarion Witten, a tight end, who obviously Keenan Bailey coaches the tight ends, was there, as well as Bryce West, outstanding cornerback, two of the members of the class that are planning to sign with Ohio State 1 week from today is when the 2023 signees. So it was in the normal course of events. The team wasn't practicing earlier this week, so the coaches were out on the road recruiting. The team's going to resume practicing tomorrow, according to the sports information director, Jerry Emig. Tomorrow through Wednesday, they're going to take this Sunday off, so they'll have 6 days in Columbus and then reconvene December the 23rd in the Metroplex and prepare for the game on December the 29th, so they'll have 6 more days down there. They had at least 2 days here in Columbus previously, so add it all up, and that gets you right at or near the 15 days of bowl practice that the Buckeyes get. And unfortunately for Keenan Bailey, it sounds like 3 or 4 youths with a firearm approached him outside the Ginn Academy and carjacked him, took his car. I believe it was a Dodge Durango that he may have been driving, either a rental or his own car. And he came out of it unscathed, and the police did arrest the youths a short while later after they tried to carjack 2 women, I guess, or 2 girls in the same basic area. And the police had a manhunt and came down with the rest of the juveniles that were involved, and they're going to face some tough charges. And you just thank God in a situation like this that Keenan is okay, and you're able to laugh about it, or smile about it a little bit in the hindsight that he survived it and he's okay. But it can be tough out there in the real world. And I've been to Glenville High School. I know the area that it is. And generally, they talk about how it's not necessarily the highest crime area in Cleveland, but, these things, do happen. And kids with time on their hands get in trouble and end up doing things that they shouldn't do. And Keenan went right back on the road. He was in Canada checking on another player yesterday. So, he kept right on marching with his job after what had to be a bit of a harrowing incident.
Absolutely. That would be no fun for anyone. And looking at the lighter side, at least from my perspective, Steve, there wasn't a moment there of hesitancy. Every time you said youths, that a movie has ingrained itself in pop culture.
The 2 youths. Yeah.
There it is. Absolutely. All right.
I will say it's a little. You get carjacked, and your first move is to move to Canada. I mean, come on.
That's funny.
That's right. All right, guys. Let's move it on to Media Day. You were all there, Kevin. Why don't we start with you? 11 players accessible. Some heavy hitters there. Kevin, what in particular stands out to you?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is that 6 of the players that still have eligibility left The only 6 that we spoke to all said they are going to be playing in the Cotton Bowl, which is significant. Only one of those players, Cody Simon, said that they'd made a decision about 2024, and Cody Simon will return to Ohio State. So there's one. The other 5 said that they still had not come to decisions, and that could be forthcoming. And we could get into some of the finer points there, but I think one of the biggest things I took away from it was when we spoke to Devin Brown about the Kyle McCord situation and how there wasn't some sort of big declaration inside the program before it came out. Some players said they learned via social media. Devin is excited about the opportunity. He's talking about the start at the Cotton Bowl as his already, though nothing has been named. But I think you do want to see a quarterback go out there and feel that is his job. It's his start. So, he was saying certainly a lot of the right things at that point. The question was brought up if Ohio State brings in a transfer quarterback, and he said, "Well, I'm not concerned about that. I came to Ohio State to compete against the best and be able to do my best. So whether or not Ohio State pursues a Cam Ward or somebody like that down the line, doesn't seem to be something that would deter Devin Brown. And I know that certainly had been a concern amongst people. And words are words, so you can take them for what it's worth. But he seems to be somebody who is fully committed and all in and excited for the opportunity and knows that Lincoln Keenholz will push him.
Yeah, I think the first takeaway for me was you had these 6 juniors say that they're going to play in the game. So then does that mean the juniors that we didn't talk to aren't going to play in the game? That was my thought. We didn't talk to Travion Henderson or JT Tuimoloau or Marvin Harrison, but we didn't talk to quite a few players who have a decision to make. So I don't know that I'm going to read too much into that. Saw somebody asking about Travion Henderson, and still he's not said anything yet about his future. And really, all of these guys talking to them yesterday, talking about how they're 50-50 or whatever. And and Jordan Hancock talked about wanting to leave a legacy, and the 2021 class, their legacy at this point has been 3 losses to Michigan and no Big Tens. So that's something that they're all going to have to collectively live with if they choose to move on, which is something that Marvin Harrison said last week. If I'd like to come back and beat Michigan and win the Big Ten, and I know if I leave, I'm going to have to live with that forever. And it seemed like to me, you could see a snowball effect with those guys coming back if they do decide to do that. And Tyleik Williams said part of his decision would be who else is coming back on the defensive line. So if you see like a JT Tuimoloau come back, maybe that leads to Tyleik Williams coming back. Things like that could just snowball. And if your defensive line is coming back, maybe Denzel Burke is like, what, I want to come back too. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And it was good to talk to Devin Brown. I was happy that they gave him to us to talk to, because he is now the guy. And so we should be talking to the guy at this point in time. So that was good. Overall, I think players talking about how they want to send the season out on the right note, and that's why they're opting in. This is an opportunity to end the season with a win. They didn't get to do that last year and lost 2 straight last year, so they don't want to do that again. And so from what the players are saying, the game seems to mean quite a bit to them. And then lastly, on Devin Brown saying that he's not going anywhere or anything like that, and when he was asked directly, would you transfer, whatever, he just shook his head no. It's not hard to go back to Tate Martell at the Rose Bowl saying the same thing. I'm not going anywhere. Players can talk all they want, but the actions will speak louder. And Devin Brown said all the right things, and we'll see what transpires here in the next month.
You're muted, Steve.
I was muted. I was there as well. Caught up a lot of the same vibes that these guys had. Denzel Burke, on CBS is at least one mock draft listed late first round.
Mhm.
So it's interesting that he's going to play Emeka Egbuka in one of the drafts is listed as high as number 16 or 17. Although as I was doing my story on his interview, he only caught 32 passes this year, which is pretty amazing when you think about how such a high volume guy he was. He only got to play in 8 of the 12 games. And when he came back, he was really a non-factor for the first game or two. So he was really only in the flow for about 6 of the games this year, and didn't have the kind of impact season. Only 3 touchdown catches for Emeka Egbuka this season, and he was closer to 10, I think, last year. So I don't have his exact numbers in front of me, but to me, I think he's an example of a guy that would benefit by coming back, kind of like Chris Olave did, and push his way into a little higher in the first round for certain. I mean, for one guy in one mock draft to have him listed middle of the first round means he could go anywhere in the first 3 rounds. So, I don't think that really is the end all be all of where his draft stock status is at this point. And we can debate all these other guys till the cows come home. Jack Sawyer had 2.5 sacks this year, 6 tackles for loss, 2 forced fumbles, was voted 3rd team All Big Ten by the coaches. So the coaches know his what he means, obviously. But I think he's an example, maybe like Zach Harrison, of a guy that can benefit by coming back and improving his draft stock as well. So, or attempting to improve his draft stock as well. But they asked Jack Sawyer, Tim May. I mean, there's a lot of sentiment out there that this game is meaningless. It's not part of the college football playoff. And Sawyer said, "Pardon my French, but I think that's a bunch of BS," is what he said, the exact term. And bully for him to be frank about, what means something to you may mean something different to me, means something different to somebody else. So for him and the guys that are going to play to embrace this opportunity, that's refreshing and great to see in this, time of NIL and transfer portal and all that other hoo-ha. I think that it's wonderful that these guys are going to wear the scarlet and gray at least one more time. As they said, the jury's still out on the quote unquote big 3 with Tui Maloau, Henderson, and Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison Jr., if he goes top 3, he's holding a $40 million lottery ticket. So, do you, and considering what happened to him in the bowl game last year with the Georgia guy trying to take his head off, and knocking him out of the game, do you put yourself out there for something like that to happen a second time? I don't know.
I got to say, I'm a bit surprised and impressed with how many guys are talking about playing in this bowl game. I just thought that there would be a mass exodus. So that's good to hear. And we can all have our various thoughts on the value of these bowl games. It's still rather high for me, but I'm an old guy. So that's where that comes from, I'm sure. We got Ryan Dawes checking in today. Ryan, we appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for that. Yes, that's where I was going. Utes, Your Honor. Yeah, Utes. Good stuff there from way, way back. Ryan coming in with this one. Thank you for that. Who is the most important returning player for the Cotton Bowl from those who said they would return?
I think maybe Emeka Egbuka, because I don't expect Marvin Harrison to play, and we know Julian Fleming's not going to play. So having one of your starting receivers back for your new starting quarterback, I think is important. Although I would expect Xavier Johnson to probably start as well. So maybe this is Emeka Egbuka moving outside, which I think is also something he should think about in terms of coming back for next year to show that he can play outside, which would improve his draft stock. But I think I might say Emeka Egbuka, and Devin Brown was certainly happy to have him back, as he said yesterday.
I think for me, it would probably be Denzel Burke, just because of Missouri truly is a two-prong attack with great running and great throwing. Cook, their quarterback, is solid, and I would like to have as little disruption as I could in my secondary. And I think that Denzel Burke would probably be the guy that, if I'm looking at what I'm doing, I mean, obviously then still you would have Davison and you would have Jordan, but I would like to make sure that I have as much of my core there as I carried for much of the season, going against a team that is really viewing this as a huge game, a program type of defining game. Even though Missouri really did not get a sniff of the playoff, this is them trying to take another step toward, you know, continued success versus kind of, the Missouri will rise up every 8 years, 9 years, have a good year, and then kind of disappear again. So I'm going to say Denzel Burke.
Yeah, I would agree with those two selections, Denzel Burke and Emeka Egbuka. They're impact guys on both sides of the ball. Certainly, the other four that committed to at least play in the Cotton Bowl were defensive end Jack Sawyer, who we touched on a second ago, as well as defensive tackle Tyleik Williams. I think Tyleik has some good NFL value there, certainly maybe as a second-round pick. And he'll have a tough maybe decision to make whether he wants to come back or not. Donovan Jackson, the offensive guard, he could be an NFL pick, maybe a second rounder, third rounder as well. And then Jordan Hancock, he's only been a part-time starter at cornerback. I look for him to come back, and if Burke doesn't come back, then he would start at corner. If Burke comes back, then he'll probably split time with Davison Igbinosun again. So, excuse me, and Jermaine Matthews is also in that group as well. Somebody on my chat asked, who do you want to see play of all these young guys in the Cotton Bowl? And I was like, how much time do we have? Devin Brown, Lincoln Keenholz, Dallin Hayden, Carnell Tate, Brandon Ennis at wide receiver, Jelani Thurman at tight end, CJ Hicks at linebacker, Jermaine Matthews at corner, Malik Hartford at safety, Kenyatta Jackson, Caden Curry at defensive end. So yeah, that's my list, and I'm sure that there's even more that'll come up in the next few days and weeks leading up to the game.
Good to see David Greenshield here. David, thank you so much for your contribution. We've got general thoughts on Kyle McCord hindering Ryan Day's play calling this past season. Never saw G.A. Day.
Is that the Ryan Day from the Georgia game? I'm guessing.
Yeah, Georgia Day.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Georgia Day.
Yeah, I think all quarterbacks hinder play calling. You call what they can do, but I also think there were plenty of plays out there to be made, and they weren't. And some of that was because of the locking on to Marvin Harrison. Some of that was because of the protection. So I think there are plays there. I think the offense itself was maybe limited because of the pieces. So because we saw it from the press box, you could see guys open, you could see guys available. And so to me, the play calling is fine. Maybe what you needed to do is change the progressions on who should be the target in some of those plays.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm putting it on one person, if I'm saying it's McCord hindering Day play calling. I mean, when you're calling plays and designing plays in the laboratory, everything works there. I mean, the other team's got helmets and shoulder pads and scholarships, and they're going to do some things, and you're just ultimately going to have mistakes happening, whether or not it's a quarterback not getting through its reads, or whether or not it's your center stepping on the foot of your guard, or whatever you may have. So, I think that Ryan Day could have gone out there and been, quote unquote, more aggressive and everything else. But I don't know if that necessarily means the equation of better execution or whatever. I mean, I don't want to necessarily rehash that game, but the guy on the other sideline had no problems going forward on fourth down and playing with house money and everything else, while the stakes were just as high over there. And to David's point, I do think that we didn't see maybe at least the emotions and everything out of Ryan Day that we saw in the Georgia game. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I necessarily need to see that to be like, okay, the team's really going to buy in because the coach is going through all these histrionics. But I don't know. I can say I've not really gone back and watched that game more than just once.
Not necessarily talking about David here, just in general. I come across and think that most fans equate throwing the ball a lot with being aggressive and running the ball with being conservative, which makes sense to a certain extent. But I do think that a lot of people would be surprised if they really dug in on what teams that are supposed to be aggressive, Lane Kiffin-led teams and others that are supposed to be just all out, flinging the ball all over the place, 5 wides constantly. That's not necessarily the case. And I believe CJ Stroud in this Ohio State offense threw the ball about halfway down the list of pass attempts in the country last season, like 60th or 65th in the nation in pass attempts.
If Ohio State throws the ball 34 times in this game, it will be the exact same number as the number of passes last year. So, the points are down. The plays, I think, are down a little bit. The possessions are down. But in reality, they might be throwing it more than they did in some instances a year ago. But I think maybe a lot of that last year is running the ball in the fourth quarter, which they also did some this year. So, I know there were plays that didn't get hit, and there's a reason, and it can't just be one reason why you're 10 points under your average from last year, and you're the first Ryan Day team to score under 40 points a game. The first time since he got there in 2017, they've been over 40 points every single year per game, and then it doesn't happen this year. I don't think you can put that all on one person, but I also think they'd be over 40 points per game if it was CJ Stroud at quarterback this year.
Yeah, he's given some indication and continues to week, although he had a bit of a bump in the road his last time out, from what I understand. But yeah, he's proven quite a bit. And they stand in terms of a national rank of attempts right about where they stood last year in the 60s. Yakov, thanks for being here. Nickname Jelani Too Tall Thurman, already taken?
Well, I mean, nicknames get reused all the time. How many Pudges in the Pudge Rodriguez, Carlton Fisk, the same position. So I'm sure you can use different nicknames on other positions. I also think it's time we have another Icky. That's just me. I think it's time for another Icky.
It's been a while.
That's what Tom and I call you, Tony.
Icky Gerdeman.
I don't like where this is going.
Oh dear.
We can save you, Tony.
Just hit rewind.
I don't know if there would be a requisite dance that would have to be involved in that as well.
Yes, there would. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Cold cuts. I got you, cold cuts.
Oh, Ferris has taken us to a place I'd like to go here. Ferris, thank you so much for the contribution. Air Noland, impressed at Elite 11. So I don't know if we have any comments there, but I've got a follow-up comment/question.
Yeah, I think a lot of that too is just talking about what the quarterback room is going to look like with Air Noland enrolling for winter semester, and obviously not going to be here in time for the bowl game. That's just not how it works, but we'll be able to go through spring practice. Air Noland is a very impressive quarterback. I think he's going to have to go through a pretty steep learning curve, though. I think fans are going to have to get used to watching a southpaw. You sit there and you watch a left-handed quarterback and everything just looks, dare I say, backwards, because it is. But yeah, he did really well at Elite 11, but how does that translate to playing college football. And we've always talked about the camp season, quote unquote, the underwear Olympics, and what does that really mean? How much real football are you playing at that point? But make no doubt, Air Nolan can sling it. Air Nolan has got some mobility to him, but I really look at him as a quarterback who can make a lot of throws. I don't sit there and say, oh well, that's the dual threat quarterback that they need. I see a quarterback that has a lot of faith and a lot of control with his arm and his throwing motion. And we had a chance to see a lot of that at Elite 11, as he had a lot of wins while he was there.
I'll take it in this.
Yeah, I'll just say, for people like putting him into the quarterback battle in 2024, please don't ever do that with a true freshman. I mean, it's unfair to the true freshman. And even when Ohio State has started a true freshman, Braxton Miller and Terrell Pryor, it didn't happen right away. And the other quarterbacks had to be pretty bad to make it happen. And I don't think Ohio State's in that kind of situation right now.
So this quarterback situation, I am guessing that if we polled Buckeye Nation, they would overwhelmingly say that Ohio State needs to go get a transfer quarterback. And I think that comes from a few places, and some are valid. Obviously, the guys on the market, they have proven track records, both good and not so good, but generally really good, have track records. So you can say, this dude throws for 25 touchdowns and 3,000 yards. Let's go get him. The guys that are on the roster are unknown. However, if they are recruiting well, if they are developing well, and they have a selection of potentially 3, although you have discarded Air Nolan for good reason to a certain extent, and his ability to truly compete this season, but 2 guys that were highly recruited, if the process is working and has worked in the past to that degree, and you're trusting Ryan Day to make that evaluation of whether these guys are ready, if they trot out a inexperienced player in game 1 and didn't go to the transfer portal, I got to say, I'm okay with that until I see it not work.
That's a tough one. Yeah, I think Ohio State fans would love to have the certainty of somebody who has put up numbers at the college level. You're going back to square one for the second year in a row with a guy, essentially he's going to play this one game, kind of like McCord had played one game previously, to starting last year. If it is Brown, if it's not Brown and it's Lincoln Keenholz, he's never played really at all, 5 pass attempts. So, yeah, I think Ohio State fans, given the uncertainty, a lot of other positions would prefer to have a known commodity at quarterback. If it's Cam Ward, there was an interesting name that crossed our message board, Caleb Williams from USC, although, a lot of people expect him to be in the NFL draft. But, yeah, I don't know. But, again, to me, I think you just have to let the process play out and understand that Ryan Day is going to handle this the best way he sees fit. And generally, I think things have generally turned out pretty well with him as the head coach and him kind of making these decisions. And the Michigan games notwithstanding, now that they're piling up one after another, but I think otherwise he's done a pretty good job finding the right people for this program. You don't hear of any problems really to speak of off the field or any divas or anything like that. So they want to make sure they get the right people to put into the locker room. And I think that they've done that during his time as the coach.
Yeah, I mean, I think people always want to, go for what's behind door number 2. We know what's behind door number 1. And while there's not necessarily a lot of depth of knowledge on what Devin Brown would bring, and there's really next to none on Lincoln Keenholz with his limited action. I mean, I think that people say, well, you need to go out and make that immediate move and go to the transfer portal and get somebody. But let's not forget that Spencer Sanders transfers to Ole Miss and can't beat out Jackson Dart. We see other places, Wisconsin quarterbacks on the move, and they don't necessarily have huge success at their new destinations, and you do run a risk. You better find somebody that is likely going to work, because if you sit there and you go out and you bring in another quarterback, do you erode the confidence that the team, in terms of the personnel, have in the guys who are already there by saying, well, we need to go out of house to get somebody? And there are going to be a couple of different types of transfer portal quarterbacks. I think Ohio State needs to bring in a body regardless. But do you go and get a top guy like a Cam Ward, or do you go and get a Chris Chugunov? Just to kind of fill out the room, maybe somebody who has a little bit more of a chance of seeing a little action than maybe Tristan Gebbia did. But with that all being considered on there, there's a lot to consider, and it's really easy when you're looking at this as a fan and you're just moving pieces on a chessboard to say, well, let's just bring in another queen, that'll be awesome, without thinking about how that's might upset the balance of the board.
I agree with Kevin. I think they're going to go get a portal quarterback. Ryan Day wants 4 scholarship quarterbacks, and they're going to have to go to the portal to get that one, because I don't see them signing 2 2024 quarterbacks, and that wouldn't really fix what the immediate concern would be. But the asking price on the starting quarterbacks is quite a bit higher than a place like Ohio State should need to pay, I guess, is how they view it, or want to pay, especially if you're trying to keep your juniors. I mean, there's only so much money. Ryan Day a year or two ago talked about they need $13 million a year just to basically keep their guys. And if you're going to take away from that to go get a portal quarterback, are you willing to do that, to lose 2 guys that you're trying to bring back, 2 juniors that you're trying to bring back? So this is just some of the thoughts that go into that. And also then you maybe wait around for the price to come down on a starting quarterback. And right now, I don't, who is the starting quarterback that gets them better than 11-1? Because I think a lot of quarterbacks can get them to 11-1, including the quarterbacks that they have. And really 10-2 is good enough to get into the playoffs next year. So is this something where, the Devin Brown or the Lincoln Kienholz that starts camp in August is going to be much, much different than the quarterback Lincoln Kienholz or Devin Brown in December and January? And Ryan Day likes to talk about the investments that you put into certain players, like, everything you put into Luke Montgomery, you're going to get back. Like everything they put into their quarterbacks right now, if they plan on going through with them, they're going to get back and more next season. And so I think there'd be excitement to see what happens with Ohio State's quarterbacks if they just stand pat. But that also depends on what those quarterbacks look like in the Cotton Bowl, and I think both should play.
So if we put the roster filling out process and that approach to the side, talking about a quarterback acquisition that is intended to be the starter or compete for the job, but most notably with that kind of money, this is the guy, he's the starter. I would hope that would only come if their evaluation of the 2 quarterbacks in play, the 3 quarterbacks, including Aaron Noland, is that they're not ready, or there's an overwhelming choice out there and they have an opportunity. Kevin mentioned Caleb Williams. If it was Caleb Williams, then that changes my approach considerably. It's Ohio State. They're looking to win national championships. Yes, either end of the spectrum of that scenario would cause me to move. However, if you take that approach every year, you're never going to start these quarterbacks. You are never going to start a recruited quarterback. They're never going to have experience.
That's where Notre Dame is right now. And Notre Dame just had to go and get Riley Leonard from Duke, and they do have a really talented true freshman coming in at this point. But does that mean that they're already locked in to have to sit there and look to the portal again in for the 25 season because this kid won't be ready yet? I mean, I don't know. So there is a point of where especially when you're taking over a program. Let's look at Michigan State. Let's look at year one of Mel Tucker and going out and getting Kenneth Walker the third, and that certainly was a big deal, and that led to a huge contract and everything else because of the success he had. But you're going to have to keep going to the portal until you start recruiting better and you start developing. And, I don't think that Ohio State is going to get to that type of point of where it's going to become a portal quarterback destination and it's just going to be 1 year and 1 year and 1 year. But you also don't necessarily want to start that cycle, because then what happens is if you get labeled as, well, this is just going to be a place of where you're going to be sitting behind portal guys and you're probably not going to get to play, you're not going to get the guys that you want to develop in the first place. And then it becomes kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
And it's also a negative recruiting tool as well for, anytime Ohio State goes to the portal year after year for a quarterback, when they're recruiting against a school for a 5-star guy or something, the other schools are going to be like, they're just going to go to the portal and you're never going to play. Look at the history. Like Oklahoma went for almost a decade without playing a homegrown quarterback. And this goes well beyond the portal. I mean, this was, Baker Mayfield, and like he had to go back to like 2007 or something before they had, so there is some of that. And Lincoln Riley, what does he do? Next year is there going to be a homegrown guy there. So I think it is a label that you're going to have to deal with if you want to go that way. But if the quarterbacks are out there, you'll take any label that you can get. If the right guy is out there, I don't think Kalen DeBoer is worried about any label after, getting Penix, although I'm not. Yeah, Penix followed. It's Penix and DeBoer obviously had the relationship from Indiana, but like, Dan Lanning, does he care right now that he's getting Bo Nix and then Dylan Gabriel? Like, at some places, like in Oregon, maybe it's better to go to the portal and get proven commodities when it may be tougher for you to get them through recruiting, although Oregon recruits pretty well. I don't know that you can exist in both worlds all that well, but sometimes you're going to have to go to the portal like Ryan Day did to get Justin Fields, and that worked out for everybody.
Kyle McCord's been connected to Nebraska most notably, but also took a trip, I believe, to Syracuse. You guys have any thoughts about, like I said, it may have been here last week or somewhere that for all the disdain that he took from Ohio State fans, some of it, yes, not living up to the expectations of the position, he will be, and I've already seen it, just overwhelmingly embraced by Nebraska fans, although they're 50 times more hyped about Dylan Raiola coming, of course. But for Kyle McCord for one season, that would improve their quarterback situation 100-fold from what they had last season.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by the idea that McCord could go and play at Nebraska and Raiola as well. Raiola once an Ohio State commit, then Georgia commit, and now they're trying to get him in at Nebraska. They gave his uncle a raise from $175,000 to $500,000 or something.
It wasn't connected, Steve. Nothing to do.
Very interesting, the timing on that, huh? I don't know. I'm Nebraska, we've talked about it before. It's kind of a sleeping giant in college football. They've got the support. They draw 85,000, 90,000 people every game, and great fans, but the football there has just been so awful for 20 years that, they just can't get out of their own way. It doesn't feel like, but even switching from Frost to Rule, you still had all the same bad luck. There they were on opening night, doinking off a game by 3 points, so I don't know. It just, could McCord go in there and win 7 or 8 games? Possibly. And is that going to put him where he needs to be or wants to be? I don't know. Good luck to him. I thought, again, I've said here on the show, I thought he was scapegoated for, everything that went wrong at Ohio State this year was his fault. And, I don't really necessarily feel that it was, but, he was certainly not the same quarterback play that he had the previous 5 years at least, or maybe 6. I don't know. So, yeah, it was, you have to look at things, I guess, in different ways, I suppose.
I just pulled up the Nebraska schedule, and I think that if they can play normal offense, like meaning some offense, 7 wins is not out of the realm of possibility. But also looking at that schedule, I think it's going to take a Herculean effort to get them to 8. So is 7-5 kind of the ceiling there? And that's me giving them wins over Colorado and Purdue. I mean, things that the games I think they should win. And I know
Games they've traditionally not done well.
I know that Colorado does have the sportsman of the year as its head coach, and we're starting to regurgitate some of those stories about how they're going to do everything and not think about how they really ended their season and the Sean Lewis situation and everything else. But with that being said, for McCord, I'd be interested to see that. I mean, obviously that creates some excitement on October 26th when Nebraska would come to Columbus. I would be here to see what kind of reception Kyle McCord gets from Ohio State fans. Is it booze? Is it a Bronx cheer? Or
it's definitely booze. Trust me.
Is it a full-throated cheer because that'll allow Ohio State to move on to a new quarterback without any real collateral damage? I don't know. I mean, Mark mentioned Syracuse as well. Fran Brown has gone up there. I mean, it's kind of become a little bit of a hot name in terms of some recruits wanting to visit there. Certainly some transfers. It's been a minute since Syracuse football has even been slightly relevant in my book. So I think that playing in the ACC, there's more opportunity for wins. Staying in the Big Ten, there's more opportunity for exposure. Will Julian Fleming and Kyle McCord be a package deal? I mean, they went on their visit together. This isn't Kyle and Marvin that have like the high school tie. I mean, yes, both went to high school in the state of Pennsylvania, but okay, so what? I mean, at that point, but do they go somewhere together? And the joke that I read on social and on message boards is why would Julian want to follow Kyle? Kyle never looked his way in the offense. So, but I'm sure Kyle would like to have him just because of Julian's blocking ability.
Well, and it wouldn't be the first time Nebraska has brought in a former 5-star Ohio State recruit, Tyreek Johnson being the most recent one. And I don't know that he ever saw the field for Nebraska. I will say you had Jack Sawyer and Emeka Ibuka talking yesterday about how they believe how unfairly Kyle McCord was treated by the fans. And they did speak out about that. And I do think you'd have cheers for Kyle McCord for the reason that you mentioned, Mark. It's allowed everybody to move on, and we're all in a better place now. Everybody's happy. I do think it was, I don't know, unfortunate or funny that while the reports of Kyle McCord visiting Nebraska are coming out, it only lasted so long before that news gets overshadowed by Dylan Raiola possibly, flipping his commitment and just completely overshadowing all of the happiness and the excitement about Kyle McCord because of a 5-star recruit. And I wonder how much, if both players choose Nebraska, how much that will mirror what happens next year when there are going to be struggles, because this is Nebraska. If Kyle McCord struggles at all, how patient can Matt Rule be? How patient, more importantly, can the Raiolas be? Because they've not been patient with anything at any point with anyone. And if it's going to be some portion of a nightmare, but sometimes you have to, as a new coach at a place like Nebraska, you've got to welcome in the nightmare and hopefully just turn it into something that you can use and then do something good with it. And I think Dylan Raiola wants to come in. You're not telling him no, not at Nebraska. You can tell him no at Georgia. You can tell him no at Ohio State. You tell their families no, that sort of thing. But with Nebraska, you want to make a splash. This is a splash. We'll see how it goes. I think Kyle McCord will be a great step up from what they've had. And it's been a long time since they've had something at quarterback. And you'd have to go back to, I think, maybe the most consistent guy, like it predates Taylor Martinez, like it's been a while. I went and looked through the stats the other day, and there's a lot of multiple digit interception quarterbacks each season. So I think you'd probably have less interceptions, fewer interceptions, fewer plays made with your legs than they normally like to have there. But I guess maybe Kyle McCord would be the player to be named later in the long ago trade for Tristan Gebbia, who was once long ago a Nebraska Cornhusker.
Based on the Nebraska fans I interact with, I think there's going to be quite a few of them that are just happy with winning 7 games and getting to a bowl game and have some type of logical expectation of progress, and would be happy with a quarterback throwing maybe 20 touchdowns in a season. That would just be phenomenal for them. They haven't come close to that in a while.
I mean, just watching Jeff Sims to start the season, the throwing crazy passes into the end zone for interceptions and blowing games. And then you go with the redshirt freshman, I think, Heinrich Harburg, and you're not getting much better play there. And your best course of action with your quarterbacks is to not let them throw. Like, that's not – Kyle McCord would be an incredible step up for them next year if he chooses to go there.
They had a game late in the season where they threw 4 picks and 13 pass attempts. It's just atrocious. But there are those fans that are going to, and how dare you, Kevin, limiting Nebraska to 7 wins, because we did our Nebraska show yesterday. And in light of all that, I'm seeing playoff comments in the chat left and right. We're going to the playoffs, 24 playoffs. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. No. Not in this Big Ten.
Whoa, that's kind of nuts when you're going to have. This is how they finish off the season: at Ohio State, home against UCLA, at USC, home against Wisconsin, at Iowa.
Oh my God, that's rough.
Yeah, there is an open week. There is an open week between UCLA and USC, but still, those are the final 5 opponents.
I've changed my mind. Kyle McCord is not going to be enough.
Yeah,
this new Big Ten got real in a hurry. Somebody's like, well, they could be good enough to compete for, I don't know, 6th in the Big Ten. I'm like, woo, 6th, great.
Yeah.
But the good thing is there are a bunch of teams that have playoff hopes, which is a change from previous years. Now, I still think all Big Ten West teams could have playoff hopes, because it's easy to win the Big Ten West and then have like 1 loss in the regular season. And then all you have to do is beat Michigan or Ohio State and you're in. And we saw, Iowa and Wisconsin both get very close to doing that. And they were far from the most talented teams in the Big Ten.
I steered a conversation the other day this way on our Big Ten show, because there were a number of people that were offended by me saying that these teams had no chance of going to a Big Ten championship game in the future. Just do the math in regards to how many teams have to be down in front of you to get to a Big Ten championship game. I said, your hope is more in the avenue of getting to a playoff. Actually, not that that's likely, but
easier to get to the playoff than the championship game.
Yeah. David, of course, good to have you here. I have no idea what I did to get this comment thrown at me here. Mark Rogers' largest fan base is the team up north. Tell him to get some new friends.
Get some new friends.
It is a fact of life that when Michigan is good, people come out of the woodwork to be Michigan fans. That's been kind of the way it's been my entire life. When they've sucked, then you don't hear anybody, really trumpet them a whole lot. But they have a fan base that is their win or tie, so there you go.
When they're losing, you only hear about go Yankees and go Cowboys.
That's right.
And they probably can't say both of those at the same time because the winning hasn't exactly been consistent with those two, especially the Cowboys. Yeah, what can I say, David? I got to go where the support is, so I'm going to throw out some Michigan videos from time to time and talk some Michigan football. It's all connected. All right, we got Ferris here. Ferris, thank you for your contribution as well. Ferris says, there's not a coach on the planet that's a better fit for
Michigan.
Oh, yes, for Michigan. Then Mike Vrabel. Let's go.
I don't think Mike Vrabel will ever be the head coach at Michigan. I don't think you'll ever see that.
Just tough guy, run the football. Is that what we're going for there?
I think so. And yeah, disagreeable, doesn't like people. That's, just
Zero
just
social skills.
Doesn't like the media.
Zero.
I mean, Ferris is right. When he's
There's
right,
that.
he's right. But I don't ever see Mike Vrabel coaching in college football. He did it for a little bit and got out as quickly as he could because he didn't like it back then in 2013. Imagine him coming to college football now and dealing with all of this. Like, you would have to put in a clause that would allow the head coach to like physically punish his athletes. And maybe then he would be okay with it.
I have nothing to add.
Yeah, he's not going there.
Michael's excited about playoff games coming to South Bend, but if they keep going 8-4 and 9-3, you're not going to see those playoff games coming to South Bend.
Nope, be more Gator Bowls.
Somebody
But-
sent me a DM the other day about Notre
Bowls and
Dame
Gator
having
Bowl.
the #1 recruiting class in 2025, and I said, aren't we repeating exactly what was going on at this point last year?
Yeah, and we said at this point last year, or when it's also happening in the spring in May, that this means nothing until Alabama gets started and until Nick Saban gets started. And so, yeah, leading at this point in a recruiting class is about like leading 3-0 after a field goal in the first quarter of a game with your first drive.
Leading the parade lap at the Indy 500 doesn't do anything for your final standing.
Chad Stryker, thank you for the contribution. Guys, any theory on why Ryan Day is only doing a Zoom call presser on signing day? Seems odd.
Anybody have a theory?
The only thing I can think of is, that's the last day of the practice that they're having with the players. So he would be at the facility. I don't understand why, and I think they're probably doing a morning practice. That way everybody can catch a plane in the afternoon if they have to fly to go back home, out of state. I can't think of a reason why they're doing it on a Zoom. I honestly don't know what that is, or why. I'm at a loss to understand why that's being done on a Zoom. So
My guess is it is a chance to allow some people to be able to be ready to get their couple of days for the holiday ready, because for this one, aren't some people like arriving as early as like the 23rd? I mean, was this the bowl game where that was the situation of, maybe it's just a chance of, if you do it at the Woody, you have to have it staffed a little bit differently. You have to have some more people there. And by doing it on a Zoom, you're taking bodies out of the equation, and
It's
you're
done.
just making,
yeah,
bada bing, bada boom.
Hit-
That's my realistic answer. And then, of course, just to pull the pin and walk out of the room. Maybe that was the only day that the Bears could interview Ryan Day.
Yeah. I think you're onto something there, that it just streamlines the process. And at 1:00 that day, everybody can go home. They don't have to entertain anybody inside their facility past 1:00, and they can close the building and everybody can leave. I think that's for their 2 or 3 day holiday break. My guess is the coaches will still be coming in and working on game plan stuff in that couple days, at least for a few hours each day. But, I think that, I think it streamlines the process for everybody working at Ohio State that day.
Yeah, I saw this asked on Twitter, and of course it generated a bunch of conspiracy theories and stuff. But I think you're right. When we do have an in-person in the team meeting room thing, you've got sound guy, you've got video guys, like they're setting up for all of this, and it's 2, 3, 4, 5 people helping out, and then the media sticks around for like 2 extra hours, and so you've got to deal with that as well. So I'm guessing they just as you guys said, didn't want to bring people in, and then also didn't want to just have reporters hanging around when people are trying to get out of the building as well. Like, I wonder if that was an issue, but I just think it's the holidays. It's real close to everybody bolting. So why prolong it when you can get everything done via Zoom that you could in the same room, I guess, relatively.
On that topic, Kevin, we are 1 week away from National Signing Day. And even though everyone's fixated on the transfer portal, this is still the lifeblood of the program. Any thoughts on where we're headed? Anything that could happen in the next week?
Oh, plenty of stuff that could happen. Since we just had the sirens go off in Columbus for it being noon, I'll try and do the quick version of this. Ohio State trying to hold on to running back Jordan Lyle out of St. Thomas Aquinas. He is supposed to take a visit to Miami this weekend. It would not surprise me if Miami were able to flip him. It is recruiting, so nothing is for certain, but Ohio State and recruiting South Florida running backs and Miami coming in at the last minute seeming to become a bit of an issue. Jeremiah Smith continues to be pursued by just about everybody. Florida State seems to be the biggest concern out there. My concern level still very low on that one, unless something happens in the next 7 days to Brian Hartline or Ryan Day. And then 3 names of kids that are either committed elsewhere or were committed elsewhere that Ohio State's trying to get in. Safety Coy Parrish out of Minnesota. That one should probably come down to Minnesota or Ohio State. He's supposed to be getting an in-home with the Gophers coaches. I like Ohio State's chances there. Carlin Jones, who was committed to Nebraska out of Texas, is a defensive lineman. I really like Ohio State's chances there. And then finally, Amaris Williams, who's out of Clinton, North Carolina, who is a Florida commit. I know this much. He's not going to go to Florida, despite not decommitting from there. A couple other schools are getting involved there, but I like Ohio State somewhat in that one to be able to land there. So that would mean potentially adding a couple more defensive linemen and a safety with Parrish, and to kind of go from there. And to get to a Mika Hanna question in there about if losing Lyle, does Ohio State go after Deshaunte Jones out of Glenville, even as a preferred walk-on? I'm sure they would love him as a preferred walk-on, but are you going to offer him a scholarship? I don't think so at this point. I mean, I'm looking at his page right now. I mean, he does have 13 offers at this point. Would he sit there and take a preferred walk-on to Ohio State versus a scholarship somewhere else? They're not a ton of Xavier Johnsons out there in the world who are going to do something like that.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, folks, make it back here next week. We will see you post National Signing Day next Thursday. Check your local listings. Kevin, appreciate you being here, and let us know what you're up to this week.
This week, I don't even know what the heck I'm up to at this point. Getting ready for National Signing Day, kind of keeping track of what's going on in the portal, things of that nature, and trying to start getting some ducks in a row, because bowl travel on Christmas evening will be here before we know it. So don't really have a huge roadmap of things planned at this point, just kind of more being ready as things happen.
Tony.
Yesterday dropped my weekly What I Know, What I Think, What I Wonder, talking about the quarterback positions and the portal and stuff like that. And also wrote about the juniors opting in. Today I'll be writing about the Devin Brown and his attitude heading into bowl prep, and then we'll have more stuff on why some of these juniors are deciding to come back and what their decision-making process will be in terms of returning for their senior seasons as well. And also just dropped Buckeye Weekly podcast today talking about some of the stuff we talked about with the players yesterday.
Steve.
Well, I'm headed to Atlanta Saturday morning, going down to see Ohio State play UCLA. Our company, CBS, is sponsoring the CBS Sports Classic at State Farm Arena in Atlanta. So I'll be there, Ohio State versus UCLA, 3 p.m. on Saturday, coming back Sunday. And that's about it. Not a whole heck of a lot going on. Working on the interviews from yesterday. Working on a scholarship number story right now with Ohio State with the class dispersion and different things like that. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Just a little of this, a little of that, and working ahead a little bit, getting some signing day content as well, ready to go too. Talking to our experts, and Ohio State has the number 2 ranked class right now. It looks just like every other Ryan Day class, heavy on skill position. On offense and defensive line. So the beatings will continue until morale improves. So there you go.
Well, thanks to you, Steve. I know that the Buckeyes blew an 18-point lead against Penn State, and they were like
In spectacular fashion.
80-1 in certain situations.
Yeah, 80-1 in the last 10 years with a double-digit lead at halftime. And the one that they lost was, I'd forgotten about this, a game at Virginia. In Thad Matta's last year in 2016, they led there by like 12 points at halftime and lost a heartbreaker at the end to Virginia. Virginia was like number 6 in the country either the year after they won the championship or the year that they did win the championship. They were really good, and Ohio State wasn't very good. So, but Ohio State 8-2 has the second best record in the Big Ten. So as bad as this overall record, so as bad as this all looks right now, just as Kevin would say, calm your bleep, and it's going to be all right. Just let it play out.
Steve, Kevin, Tony, thank you so much. We'll be back here next Thursday, folks, on Buckeyes Live.